everyone, and welcome to the Art of Creation Show. My name is Rebecca Boswell. I'll be your host today, and today we're going to be speaking with the lovely Heather Nichols on the topic of love and points of view. So for those of you who have been watching along in this series on love, we've kind of gone a whole bunch of different ways with this one little word, and I think if there's anything that we've realized is that there are so many different things that this one little word tries desperately to point at, and sometimes gets kind of close and lots of times misses the mark entirely. So today, speaking about points of view and love, I wonder what we will discover together. So to have this conversation, Heather is here. She is a facilitator of consciousness. She has been working with bodies, physically, energetically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for many, many years, and has had many businesses that have helped people in all different ways to create greater, find their superpowers, utilize those superpowers, and pretty much just create magic in the world. So Heather, thank you so much for being with us here today. Joy of business, X-Men, like how does it get any better than that? Thank you so much for playing with us today.
Thank you. I'm excited. I love this topic. It's funny. It's like the one topic I don't do a lot of classes on, but I love it. I love it. And I've played a lot with the tools of access in my own relationship, and it's been such a gift.
Yeah, I've actually over the years, I've really enjoyed watching you ebb and flow in your relationship, your creationship, whatever you want to call it, and really play with, okay, so we are these two beings and we have all of these things that we're creating, and what would it be like to actually just play and enjoy each other and live in a world that kind of comes together a lot more than maybe with other people in your life, and find that dance in a way that works for both of you. And it's been really fun to watch. And so let's get back to that before we even really start this conversation. You know, lots of times when we start a conversation about something, you know, one of the first tendencies is to define it, right? Mm-hmm. And so in this conversation, what is love? If we were to take a few words, put them together in a sentence with a period on it, would that be a point of view?
Well, yeah. I mean, so much to say about that. Well, love, it really does depend on kind of the energy and where you're coming from. But for most people, love is so charged, and it has so much meaning and projection and expectation and judgment to it. And so many things sort of around it that people think they need to do to prove that they love. And to me, love is really, it's about gratitude and allowance. It's about actually gratitude and allowance and receiving of ourselves and other people.
Yeah. That's one of the things, like the more that I look at this, it's almost like the more that I or we attempt to define it in terms of what it looks like, the more kind of strange it gets, because of all of the different layers that get put on top of this thing that actually has no boundary, that has no, if I've really come to anything, it's that it is everything. Like, you could take the word energy, and if it was fun, you could even just swap it for love. And if you took away all the things that you thought love was, and it could actually just be all of everything, it's like, oh, okay. But I can't really put that in a neat little word package.
Which is good. But the best things are the things that you cannot define.
Yeah. So points of view. So where do points of view get us in trouble? And how can we even start to recognize that we have points of view, because I mean, when we're, if I give you a definition of what love is, like I thought I just knew that, or I thought that was just what it is. So how can I even start to um, begin to differentiate when I am in a point of view and when I'm just being?
Yeah, well, gosh, that's a great question. Um, well, where do points of view get us in trouble? Everywhere. That's the short answer. Um, Anywhere and everywhere that they exist. I mean, basically, when you have a point of view, you have a judgment, you have a computation, you have a decision, you have a conclusion, you have a projection or an expectation. Those are all different kind of flavors of the points of view that we have. And and so and any point of view stops. It's a stop. Like it stops the energy of possibility from actually moving and coming into our worlds and expanding. So if you have a point of view about love or somebody or like a person that you might love or whatever, but even if you just have a point of view about love, it's like it's a limitation as to what that energy can be in your world. And I've played with this, like, I mean, even when I got divorced when my kids were really little and basically kind of babies, and it was so cool because my ex, we just sort of like looked at each other and we were like, he said to me, "Do you feel like we're friends that have kids together, like just friends that have kids together?" And I was like, "Yeah." And we were like, "Okay, well, why don't we just do that instead of trying to like be married, you know?" And it was so cool because we were both willing to just acknowledge what was and not have to like define our relationship, and just go, cool, if that's what is, then let's just be that, and
Mhm.
let's do that, you know. And we could still contribute to each other and love each other and work together and raise the kids and all that without having to fit into this thing that wasn't actually, so. But if we had had a point of view about it, we would have been totally, it's either like, okay, well, we can either be married and love each other, or we can hate each other.
Yeah.
you know that's the other alternative. And we never really hated each other. We still, I mean, it's been, I don't know, 12 years. And we have this amazing flow of co-parent, like it's just really easy,
Yeah.
doing the co-parenting thing, and it always has been.
Well, and that's, I think, such an interest. I mean, I love that example in the sense that, when it's all the points of view, and yet look at, if we're going to, just for the sake of this conversation, look at love as something that is that space of non-judgment, that space of flowing energy, that space of um, mutual honoring, gifting, receiving, right? Like if that is actually, allowance, like if all of that is actually more indicative of what love actually is, look at how much more of that you actually were able to grow in the space of your relationship, creationship, family unit, even if it wasn't in one house together,
Mm-hmm.
right? You just added a little space, right? And so you actually grew the energy of love between all of you in your family.
Yeah, and like for ourselves too. And that was, I would say that
Yeah.
to me, it's like these conversations really do kind of need to start with ourselves. And most people tend not to start there. But it's so huge. Like if you don't have these energies with you, you can never have them with anybody. Like it's not really possible to have them with another.
Yeah.
So there was a real, like the choice at that, like, I know for me, I was like, there's something so different that I know is possible for my life. And I chose it when I chose to get divorced. And I didn't have any idea what that looked like, but I was really willing to trust myself, honor myself, love,
Yeah.
like, and have that sense of like allowance and gratitude for me. Um, where I was like, okay, let's create that then, and I've since, a couple years after we got divorced, I met my current partner, and we've been together for 10 years. And I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal what we created. So different, not a lot of points of view, always in the creation of it. But it's like he and I both kind of did our own, and continue to all the time, like really like the cultivation of that energy with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, he actually, my partner, Brian, he just, he's a meditator. And when he meditates, he's always like so much happier, so much more himself, and he gets to have more of him and I get to have more of him. And it's like, so it's such a contribution to him and our relationship. Um, and he's been really busy, so he kind of got out of the rhythm of meditating. And I've been like, hey, like nudging him, just like, hey, you love meditating, why don't you, not because I needed him to change, but it was just like, this is a huge gift to you, like, maybe you want to add that back in. And he just last weekend he did like I think it was like a 4-day silent retreat. He has a cabin in the woods in Washington, and he went up there and did his meditation retreat. And it was just so cool, because it was like that. I'm like, I want him to have that. Like, and he came back and he was like, I'm so much more connected to myself now.
Mm.
And then our relationship was like, it just got like infinitely greater, which it already was great, but it got even greater. It's from him doing that,
Yeah. Yeah, I had Katerina Valentine, she was on a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about this in the context of self-love, right? We talk so much about self-love and what is that and what does that look like and how can we access that? And part of that conversation really was this piece of, it's when you're actually able to stop looking outside of yourself for things that you can take in to feel whole, but rather actually when you can access whatever the energy is, whatever that possibility is of, if we want to even call it love, that's just everywhere, that we actually recognize how whole we are and how much of a part of everything we are. And then we get to go out and be that and just gift it. Like, we just get to be that. And there's no need even for anything to come back. And yet the irony of it, of course, is that when you don't need it, it just comes and comes, and there's a magnetism, right?
Yeah, totally. With everything in your life.
Yeah.
That you just, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and right, it's that. So even, I know you do a lot of work with business and money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I might even say, well, is it even the energy of love that allows us to receive money? And how much is actually the energy of money really just an aspect of this energy that we're aware of that is actually love? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what if it's all just different aspects of the same soup?
Yeah. Yeah. And, one of my absolutely like favorite, most like the tools that I use the most, from Access Consciousness, is the 5 elements of intimacy.
Yes.
So gratitude, allowance, honoring, vulnerability, and trust. And this is, so everything that we've been saying, it's like you could replace the word love with those energies, which is, to me, that's what's true for me, is
Yeah.
it's really more about that. And so, like, allowance, not having any judgment, gratitude, and this is about having intimacy with you and with other people. And again, you got to have it with you before you can have it with others. Allowance, gratitude, honoring, vulnerability, and trust. And that, when you cultivate that with you, you can then create anything in your business that you desire to create. Like, you're unstoppable, because you're willing to take risks, you're willing to take leaps, you're willing to be vulnerable, you're willing to have allowance. Like, it opens up this creative space that's like, which also opens up your money flows, which also changes your body, which also allows you to have more fun, which also allows other people to come into your life where you have that with, so it's sort of it's really my kind of, I don't know, like North Star energy
Yeah.
that I'm always playing with me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what are some of the ways? So, when people come to you and you're just even starting out at the beginning with someone with these elements of intimacy, where do you begin and where can people really start this practice to open up to these elements and start letting go of some of those judgments that they may have had?
Yeah. Well, I really kind of start wherever somebody is. So I would always just look at, what's going to create the greatest. But the thing that pops when you ask that is actually the energy of vulnerability. Um, Vulnerability is it's vulnerability and allowance are very connected, because allowance is about not having judgment of ourselves and anything. Vulnerability is about not having barriers, and your mind and your judgments are barriers. So there's like these energies that really feed each other and kind of go hand in hand. Um, but um, but any point of view that you have, any judgment that you have, is a barrier to the receiving of you, to the receiving of the rest of the world, to the receiving of money. I mean, all these things. And it's an interesting time right now in the world. Like, as we're recording this, we're in the coronavirus, insanity. And there's like, you could easily, and a lot of people in the world are doing this right now, like really refusing vulnerability, because there's a level of sort of feeling exposed when you have vulnerability. And a lot of people have misidentified it as weakness. Like, to so many people, vulnerability means that you're weak.
Yeah.
To me, it's actually one of the greatest powers that we have, superpowers that we have. Um, and so it's like, what if you got really present with you? Even in this time, like when everybody's like, what if you got really present with you? What if you got really present with what's going on in the world? You
Yeah.
know, and actually chose to, you can actually just do a physical, like, lower the barriers, just let them drop, let them dissolve, because they're just your mind. um Let them go and see what it's like to, like, play with the energy of being a little more exposed to yourself and to the world than you've been willing to be before. And the beauty of that is that that's where it's like, you can't selectively put up barriers. You can't put up a barrier to the things that you don't want to be aware of, or that you don't want in your world, while not putting up barriers in all directions. So when you put up a barrier to something you've decided is bad, you're putting up barriers to everything, including your awareness, the beauty of you, the receiving that you can have in the world and with other people, and money and all of it. So as you lower your barriers and are willing to get more exposed to yourself, and to the world, you also, there's this like huge treasure trove of awareness that we all have, that we begin to access,
Hmm.
that you can't access with those barriers in place, which is why, to me, vulnerability is a huge part of creation, because you don't have access. I mean, to me, creating from your awareness is it's the fastest, easiest, most elegant and dynamic ways to create. But if you're not willing to be vulnerable, you don't have access to any of that.
Yeah. And I really, as you're speaking, I mean, just so many things are flooding in. But what kind of rises to the top is just this awareness of how many points of view there are right now flying around. Some that have really solidified as like super big points of view that have a real magnetism, like drawing a lot of people to those individual points of view. And then you have like all these little ones that different people are tapped into. And I just got this image of Gulliver from Gulliver's Travels. when he makes the Lilliputians and they have him tied down with all of these teeny little ropes, and right, like any one of those little ropes he could snap so easily, but there are so many of them that he's tied down, he can't move. And I have this image of just like, oh my gosh, each point of view is really a tether, and when we're not aware of it as a tether, if I have a point of view and I acknowledge it and I choose it, then at least I know this is like I'm holding on to this balloon. I have this string and it has a balloon on it, and I'm going through life and I'm choosing this.
Mm-hmm.
When we're not choosing it, it becomes one of the strings, like Gulliver, that eventually is to the point where you're not even really free to move about or choose whatever it is that you might actually want to choose if all of those things weren't combating.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, that's funny is that we actually are always choosing everything.
Yeah.
So we have the point of view that we're not,
Yeah.
but we are always choosing everything, so
Yeah.
if you're tied down with all these strings, you can be like, cool. And here's where
Yeah.
vulnerability
Consciously choosing. Consciously choosing.
well, but this is brilliant, because this is exactly where vulnerability comes in. And this is really like, now we've jumped to kind of more advanced level, but let's go. So you're tethered, you've got all these, you're stuck in your relationships. You're stuck with your husband or your wife, or you're stuck with your body or your business or whatever. You're stuck, you're tied, you're tethered, all these strings. Now, if you tell yourself in that position, somebody has put me here, then you also have the point of view that you can't actually get out of it. Someone has to get you out. If someone put you there, if you're a victim, somebody has to get you out. Or if you're waiting for your partner to choose, you're screwed. You have no control over the situation. You have no choice, right? So you're not, but if you're willing to go, okay, I'm going to get super vulnerable with myself right now.
Yeah.
I'm here, I'm tethered, and I actually am choosing this. I'm choosing this, even though I don't want to admit that I'm choosing it, even though why the hell would I choose it, even though it makes no sense, and you feel like you can't get out. The moment you recognize I'm choosing this,
Yeah.
you've given yourself the point of view, basically, you've empowered yourself to acknowledge, wow, if I'm choosing it, I can choose something different. I can actually, if I've chosen to put myself here, I can choose to get out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is, I mean, if, y'all take nothing from this conversation,
Right.
take that.
Exactly. And I mean, and I know like sometimes it can be challenging to, like, from a psychological perspective, I think
Yeah,
it can be very easy to get that as a concept.
absolutely.
Um, I think where it sometimes becomes more challenging is when we start going into more of the abstract or energetic areas to say, like, well, but I didn't choose the coronavirus, or I didn't choose to lose my job, or I didn't choose, right? Like that, it happened because of the world outside. And that's where I think that's where it can get really challenging for people, and can even elicit like really strong emotion, like anger,
Sure.
upset, rage, even at, like, how could you even say that when all of these things are raging on, um, and yet there's so let's talk about that a little bit, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah. I, yeah. And I mean, it's a highly, highly controversial point of view, you
yeah.
know, so it really is. And so I don't expect a whole lot of people to go there.
Well,
Yeah.
but even if
And
you start like at, like, if we do kind of put it into levels, right?
yeah,
Like, I think the notion of responding versus reacting, I think the world is becoming more and more capable of bending their brain around that, right? Like,
well, yeah, because when you feel like you can't change something, it can be the coolest gift to give yourself. I mean, I've had so many things in my life where I was like, I cannot change this. Like, I have not been able to change this. I cannot change it. I feel so stuck, and those are the moments where, when I have, no matter how, where you're like, why would you choose this? Why would you choose the virus? Why would you choose blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
But when there's no way, there's no other solution in sight, which is a huge part of what's going on in the world right now. Like, we don't have a linear solution for the world, quote unquote, problem right now. I would actually call it a possibility. But,
Well,
but we don't have a linear solution. Like, this reality is not going to be able to fix itself at the moment. It's in havoc. It's in turmoil. And those are the moments where it's like, okay, well, shit, what do I have to lose? May as well entertain a different question or a different possibility, and that's, to me, a lot of what I've kind of walked myself through. And this is the vulnerability with ourselves, is to go, okay, let's just say that this thing that I feel like I can't change, let's just entertain the possibility that I am choosing this. I'm going to get more vulnerable with me than I ever have before. And I'm going to ask myself, what do I love about this? Or another question is, what's the value of this? Those two slightly different questions. But there is an opportunity there to get, like, what's the value of this? And there's a universe that can open up of these crazy things that we choose, that we think we would never choose, but there is some value to it. Like, we get to stay connected to other people. We get to stay part of the drama. We get to, die, and, maybe we didn't realize that we wanted to die, but we actually hate being in the world because it's such a fun place to be,
we get taken care of, or
make
whatever.
Other people wrong, or be a victim. Like, the victim energy is just so addictive. A lot of people are very addicted to the energy of victim. And it's been so cool for me because, I've kicked and screamed in the past. I don't anymore, because I know this is a really dynamic question. But when I've asked that of myself, what's the value of this, or what do I love about it? And the level of vulnerability required is always, it's always a little terrifying, and I would say breathtaking, really. When you actually choose it, it's like, oh, the relief, Because all of a sudden there's this huge, like, cement block of stuff that's been locked in place, that now you've broken it up, and now you're like, oh, all right, now I can actually change this.
Yeah. And, it's funny. It's almost like we've somehow decided that the default switch is to, like, what's wrong. And so then it's almost like that vulnerability piece, right? Like, we don't want to look at it because we think it's wrong, as opposed to, like, what's the value of it? I mean, really, we wouldn't be choosing it if it didn't have a value, if it didn't protect something or preserve something, or, get us something, or help us feel like we're moving away from something else, maybe that we have fear around, or whatever we've decided. So it's like, whatever it is, if you learn that the oven is hot and you now don't want to touch the oven, you're going to do everything you can to not touch the oven. But what about if the oven isn't actually hot, or the oven can actually help you cook your food? Like, maybe, right? Maybe you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I love that. It's that thing of if you have just one solid point of view, you can't actually access any of the other possible points of view that are also available at that particular moment. So it's not really about not having any point of view. It's just recognizing the point of view that you are choosing at that time.
Yeah. And recognizing also that there's always, like, hundreds more points of view holding a point of view in place. Like, we've created this whole definition of ourselves based on our points of view that, I mean, and I've been really looking at another, like, really vulnerable space to explore of, who would I be without my points of view? Like, if I actually didn't have points of view, who would I be? Because I've defined myself, as, I'm Heather Nichols. I do this. I stand for this. I love this. And it's like, wow, if I didn't have points of view about any of it, who I am, who I'm not, what I can be, what is not okay to be, how would I even fit into this world, you know?
Yeah. And how
And
would I belong? Which is really interesting because it's like this thing of, right, if as these human animals, like how much of what we choose is actually about belonging to the common experience of all the other animals on the planet that look kind of like us, and right, that we are in connection with. And that was one of the big questions that I was asking, looking at coming into this conversation, like what what is love, or like what is actually there that we're aware of that is love, when there's absolutely no point of view at all attached to it whatsoever. What is that? And it's that, I think it's sort of the same question that you're asking, because if you take all of the points of view away, then you actually just become that, whatever that energy is.
yeah, and I would say like there's space. Like there's
Space.
space, there's gratitude, there's being, there's presence, there's no judgment, like there's allowance. And I don't, I mean, I use the word love sometimes, but I use it with a specific energy for me, but I've gotten really clear on what that is.
Yeah.
But it really is, it's one of those words that's so charged, you know, and I would say like adoration and gratitude, like
Yeah.
gratitude. When
Yeah.
you have gratitude for somebody, you can't judge them. When you love somebody, you can't, like love carries with it a lot of judgments, you know.
Yeah.
And the space of gratitude and the space of not needing something or somebody to change, you know, the allowance of that, like the honoring of that.
Yeah.
um it's incredible. And I gotta say, like I have that in my relationship. If we want to bring it back to
Yeah.
relationship, I have that in my relationship. And you know, more and more all the time, like we actually are consciously always cultivating that with each other. Like, hey, like we just had a conversation a few weeks ago. We were in Mexico and having like a little vacation, and it was like, hey, you know, what if we really turned up the no judgment with each other? Like, what if we really, really committed to never judging each other ever, you know? And we were both like, awesome, game on. Like, let's, you know. And so now, like, we've started to see, oh, wow, this is a place where I judge you, or this is a place where I judge me, or whatever. And it's so cool to be in the play of that with somebody who's actually really choosing that as well.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the phenomenons that you can create in a relationship when well, I mean, when you have somebody who's willing to do that and be that with you, it's amazing. And you can also set the tone, even if you don't have somebody who's willing to have that conversation with you. You can set the tone for it by choosing that yourself,
Yeah.
and watch your whole relationship change, you know, or you find out, you know what, this isn't working for me, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
But we get to be the leader in that conversation, whether anybody is with us or not.
Right. Right. You be the party, and then the party always goes with you.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's super fun. It's super fun when someone shows up to play on that playground with you, you know. I mean, it's just amazing.
So to start doing that, like whether you have a partner or not, even if you're just doing it to see where you're still judging yourself that maybe you hadn't noticed before, you want to really be in that vulnerable space, really see where the judgment is, really play with what would it be like to let that go. Um, where do you start? Where does someone start?
Well, I would say it is a choice. Um, just to go, yeah, you know what? I don't really know what that looks like. I don't even really know how to do that. But I know that I would like to. And so I'm choosing it. Like I will have that, you know. Now, choice isn't, it only lasts for 10 seconds, you know. So you can't be like, well, I chose it and now whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It's like cool, you choose it and you keep choosing it. And there's going to be, because, every time we choose something where we're like, wow, because you don't have to know how. You don't have to know how to do anything. And I always say that to people, you're off the hook forever having to know how again. It's not really relevant when you're playing with energy and choice. It's just, you just choose. And as soon as you choose something, there's different awareness, new awareness that shows up that gives you more information, more awareness, more space, more possibilities to play with, more choices, and you just keep choosing it. And, you may hit a few walls, like you may choose that. And then all of a sudden you may feel like your life has gotten really shitty. Because what happens is when we choose that, then we also start to see all the stuff we weren't willing to see before. Oh man, like here's where I haven't been willing to be this with me. Now it's up in your face, or here's where I haven't been willing to be this with other people. Now it's going to be in your face. Or here's where other people are doing that with me. Now it's in your face because you've chosen it, now what are you going to do? You're going to keep choosing it, or, keep playing with it, keep lowering your barriers, or,
expand your awareness.
Expand
Your awareness. Yeah, ASAP.
Yeah.
So what about, can you also just share with us a little bit about how you play with the interesting point of view tool?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we need to pop that in here somewhere. It's like one of my main tools that I use. So it goes like this. It's one of the 10 keys to freedom and access consciousness. And there's a book, The 10 Keys to Total Freedom, which is amazing. And you just basically go, interesting point of view, I have this point of view. Or interesting point of view, someone else has this point of view. There's the book. So anytime you notice that you're in a point of view, that you have a judgment about something, do it with yourself. And this is where you actually do have to get vulnerable. It's not about just saying the words. You can say the words, whatever. That's not really going to do a whole lot. You have to choose it, right? Okay, cool. Interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Interesting point of view. I have this point of view. Interesting point of view. I have this point of view. And it's a magical tool because it literally like moves into your space and creates more space if you're actually choosing it. And you can do it with other people. Interesting point of view. They have that point of view rather than resisting their point of view or trying to prove your point of view right, theirs wrong, whatever. Just it actually like facilitates the lowering of your barriers. And it's a tool for allowance. It gets you into allowance. It gets you out of the judgments, and then there's more space. There's more of you. There's more you available to play.
Yeah. And it's that space. I mean, really, if this whole thing is about love, it's like, how much space are you willing to be? And what if actually the more space you're willing to be, the more that you're actually accessing all those other possibilities that we've been hinting at. Yeah. So yeah, for those of you, I don't know if in the recording it's going to show an awkward Rebecca trying to get this behind her, or if it'll just show you the whole time. But this is the book, and I can put it in the show notes as well. But it's real easy to read, and it's basically in conversation form, and yeah, lots of great gems in this one. So, and even just the energy of you doing the exercise right now, I can even just perceive a change, even though no one's watching live yet. Well, they are now, actually. Yeah. Just creates a different space, even just that. So I wonder, really playing with that, and making a choice to play with that every day. And even I think it was Dane who would say, you do it and then you forget that you're doing it, and then you remember, and so you do it a little while longer, and then you forget, and then it totally is like that until it, it just kind of becomes part of how you're being in your day, and just experiment, see what that changes.
Well, and the thing is that every single thing that we're talking about here is available and accessible to you if you be interesting point of view and beyond, like way beyond.
Yeah.
Um, it's one of the most dynamic tools for creation that there is. And I committed to doing it for a year, and that was over 2 years ago. And
It
just
was that long ago? Wow. Wow. Okay.
during the Art of
Continue.
Creation class, actually.
Oh, wow.
Because we both did a class called The Art of Creation with Gary Douglas and Dean here.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the star of the show of that class. Interesting point of view and allowance was really like the big, tool for in that class. And I went, okay, you know what? I'm doing this. I'm being this now. And it's been amazing what has changed in my life and what has shown up just from that one little tool. There's a real power and potency that we get to have and choose when we allow the tool to actually work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's these four little words, that is a universe that can take you from trauma, drama to peace and ease like that.
Yeah.
If you're willing,
Yeah.
if you're willing
Yeah.
to be so different as to not be attached to your trauma, drama, not value it, not love it. Like we were talking about, what's the value of this? What do I love about this? Oh, I get to be like everybody else. Oh, I get to be real. I get to be, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, what if that's not valuable? What
Yeah.
if space, peace, ease, allowance, vulnerability, gratitude, trust, honoring is what is actually valuable? And, you have to decide what's valuable for you. For me, that's what's valuable. And it's what you can create in your life from that space is just in every way, monetarily, relationally, with your body, with your business, everything, with your parenting, everything it's amazing.
Yeah. The space, and, every episode, I guess this is almost, has it been 3 years already? This show's been going through, it must have been going 3 years, because it was about a year. I think it was already going about a year before that class, The Art of
Yeah.
Creation. Wow. So it's been a while. And really the whole thing about this is just, right, really the interesting point of view that choice creates, and that what are we choosing, and what does that create? And but then also having a sense of like, what can I even choose, right? And that acknowledgement right here, that there may also be things that we didn't even know that we could choose, and so haven't been choosing them. And so even just starting to ask, right, and whether you believe in energy or not, right? Energy exists, whether you agree with your capacity to play with energy. I don't even know how to say this in a way.
Well, if
If
you
the idea of playing with energy is
recognize
strange to you, let's put it that way. You can even just look at it from the psychological perspective of cognitive dissonance, right? When you have something that's kind of a question, or something that your brain doesn't know what to do with, like, it will continuously look for information to be able to close that loop. Now, of course, that can create a whole bunch of different things if you just fill in the gaps with conclusions or assumptions, or false or stretched information. And it can also be one of those things where you can say, well, okay, what could I choose that I've never chosen before? What could I choose that would create this other thing that I would really enjoy? Like, I would really enjoy living in this way, or I would really enjoy releasing this thing from my past, or whatever it is. What could I choose? What can I choose? What can I start being? What can I become for that? And then just allow, even whether it's your brain to start, and then energetically, however you want to look at it, would you be willing to go out into the world and allow that new information to come in?
Mm-hmm.
And be like, well, how about this choice? Or how about this choice? Or would you want to do this? And the cool thing is, it's like the more that you acknowledge those things then that are showing up, that the universe, or however you want to look at it, is saying, do you like this? Do you like that? The more you're like, ooh, I am interested in that. Or, ooh, I will try that. Or, oh, what else do you have? It's like just more and more starts bubbling forward. And your receivers and your capacity to hear the whispers or notice something in just that one flash of a moment starts to increase to where you're able to see and acknowledge and receive and play with so many more things. So what can you add to that? What else would you?
Oh, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
more of that. So even just what can I choose today? What interesting point of view can I be today?
Yeah. Yes. Read the book.
Yes, absolutely. So, before we close, I know we went a little bit longer than planned, and I'm just so grateful for your time. It's always so fun chatting with you, and I wonder what this can create for people who get to enjoy the content and play with the tools that we've offered. How can people connect with you and play with you further if they want to seek you out?
Well, my website is the easiest. It's heathernichols.com. And I'm on Facebook a lot. Heather Nichols CF, certified facilitator. So that's my business page. So yeah, those are a couple places. And I've got all kinds of, I'm always doing tons of online stuff and, classes and on every topic really. And this energy of these elements of intimacy gets woven into everything that I do.
So you have something coming up April 1st. So for those viewers who are seeing this before then, what can they join you to do?
It's called Love Notes from the Universe, and it's basically it's a daily 5-minute video with me doing an energetic exercise, and really looking at and playing with this receiving, and the universe having our backs, and right now that's a little iffy in a lot of people's worlds. But what if we could really strengthen and cultivate that space and know that no matter what's going on in your life or in the world, the universe is actually creating in the direction of greater with you and for you. So this is kind of it's a little touch in for people every day, especially right now, to just connect with that energy and the possibility of that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So then, and they can find the link for that on your website, or is there a specific link for that? Okay.
Yeah, it's heathernichols.com/love notes.
Okay.
But it's on my website too. So
excellent.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, Heather, thank you so much. I know sometimes these topics, they're just so big, and to even try to poke at them, it's always kind of like the image that I get in my head is the the blind men and the elephant. It's like you're trying to describe the whole elephant in that one moment, but with your eyes closed. So anyway, or actually, what was the one? Oh, when Susie Godsey was on, I'm like, it's kind of like you're trying to talk to the invisible man, and so you're just sort of splattering paint to try to at least get some sense of where he kind of is. It's like that's what these conversations kind of are, and yet, I wonder the more that we have these conversations, and start even just with ourselves. I love how much we talked about, or you brought vulnerability into this, because I think when the show is over and you're off on your own, when the thoughts start to come, or you start to kind of play with some of these things, um, just to know, okay, if it starts to feel a little strange, if you start to feel a little squirrely, like what if that is exactly the edge, the change, the place of growth that you are asking for, and what would it take to just exhale and as others would say, lean in,
Mm.
um, and see what if actually the greatest capacities, superpowers, energies, love, were just on the other side of that.
I
And
love that.
yeah,
Cool.
well, I adore you.
I adore you. Thank you so much. This is awesome.
I use the word I love a lot in terms of like, oh, I love that. And really it's, I enjoy, it's like it's saying, oh, I so enjoy that. And, but I use the word love, and that's fun for me.
Yeah.
And, but when it comes to you, I absolutely adore you. And
Aw.
I do love you too, because I do also enjoy you. But I am so grateful for you and everything that you're creating, and just, yeah, just
Thank you. Thank
knowing
you so
you're in
much.
the world,
Aw,
being what you're
back
being.
at you. Yeah,
Yeah.
really. Thank you.
All right. Well,
Mhm.
sending out the biggest virtual hugs and snuggles. And I never say that on this show, but for some reason I'm like having this real, like very warm sense for everyone who is tapping into this today. And
Cool.
so wherever you are, whomever you're with, may you be well. May you enjoy. May you have more fun than you ever thought you could possibly have in this interesting time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And okay, everyone, until next time, I wonder what we'll discover next. We'll see you later. Bye bye.